Hello, my name is Dr. Nicki Roman, and I am the Assistant Professor of Saxophone at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee's Peck School of the Arts. And today we are in beautiful Bader Hall here on campus at UWM. And I'm here to share with you some tips and tricks as you prepare for your 2021 WSMA High School State Honors Audition. Specifically, how to prepare the Alto and Tenor Saxophone Etude. Okay, so you have the Etude out in front of you. This may be the first time you're pulling it out and putting it on your music stand, or you've been preparing it for several months. I think it's crucial to familiarize yourself with the key at any stage in which you're at on this Etude. Even more importantly, right from the get-go, at the very beginning. So, we see it's in B-flat minor, the title gives us that answer. So not only should you be familiarizing yourself with B-flat minor, but also its respective major key. So I like to start by just playing through my D-flat major scale nice and slow so that my hands and my ear gets comfortable with the key it's in. And the relative minor, and I'm gonna really work a lot on harmonic minor because we see quite a bit of A naturals in here, implying that raised seventh B-flat harmonic minor. Take a look at the tempo marking on the top left-hand side of the page. Andantino in 6. So this implies a few things. One, the character, and also the pulse you should be feeling throughout. Andantino also implies that it's slightly faster than something such as adagio. It's more moderate in tempo. This is important because you don't want to take it too slow that it feels lethargic and that you'll have difficulty making full phrases and you'll have to breathe quite frequently. You also want to make sure it's not too fast that you feel rushed and you're on edge throughout the entire etude. It's important to keep in mind. In any etude, or any piece of music, it's important to be thinking about phrasing. This etude in particular, I want to talk about phrasing in relation to sequencing. Sequencing is a set of related events, or in this case, melodic material, that follow each other and are related, perhaps in a different key or with altered pitches. There's many places throughout this etude that you can be working on your sequencing and pointing out different types of sequencing, from the first line all the way to the last line. I want to point out one in particular and give you some things to think about. Find line 8. After the double bar, we have some sequencing going on in these 8 measures. The first 4 bars are presented, then presented again in a different key. In the first 4 bars, I really like to bring out the downbeat, upper D flat, and aim all the way to the quarter note. Then in the second 4 bars, I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to emphasize that downbeat so much, and I'm really going to push through the line more. This is in order to highlight that it's connected and somewhat of a continuation of the first 4 bars. So I'll demonstrate this. This really helps inform my breathing. A big piece of advice I want to give for when you're recognizing this sequencing is to not play each iteration the same. Be creative. Let's next talk about breathing. Map out your breaths. Our choices we make in terms of breathing can have either a negative or positive impact on our phrasing and our performance. Really make sure you're planning these out accordingly, and within this, pay careful attention to entrances immediately preceding these breaths you are taking. Make them expressive, make them intentional, and not just simply an act in which you must take in order to hold on and make the next phrase. An example of this is just in the first line. I'm going to play two different versions for you. Example A, which I'm not going to really be paying attention to how I end and start a phrase within a breath. And example B, I'm going to really be intentional in how I taper and then start a new phrase with a breath in between. So here's example A. And example B. You likely have a vibrato that you've been working hard at, so let's use it. Some great opportunities for this are during these longer sustained pitches, dotted half notes and dotted quarter notes. But on a more large scale, be wise and be smart in how you use these so they're really adding to what you want to say as an artist. In addition to this, I like to think about my vibrato in terms of dynamic contrast. Here's an example of where I might use my vibrato to really highlight a dynamic change or perhaps a crescendo, so that I have to think less about pushing in terms of volume and can think more about a beautiful spinning vibrato. So I really used my vibrato to bring out a forte dynamic and then contrasted that with a subito dynamic change that I straight toned the upper F. Ways to really use your vibrato to highlight these dynamic changes. It's important to not overlook intonation. This etude is more tonal in nature, and we see several instances of middle D flats and upper D flats that can be notoriously out of tune on our horns. They also don't necessarily match between octaves. Really try your best to make sure you're matching pitch across these octaves, not only in the D flats, but in other instances of this in the etude. We see D flats, at the fermatas we see octave Fs, and even in the last three measures we see octave B flats. Don't rely on looking at a tuner. Find a drone and find a way to really train your ear to be hearing the intonation on these pitches. This is a really great piece of advice in general as you're practicing this instrument. I want to leave you with a piece of advice on how to practice the ending. We tend to see trills and grace notes and mass chaos ensues. I want to give you some tips on how to go about practicing this so you can finish strong and convincing. So find the last three measures of this etude. First, I'd like you to practice it by taking out the ornamental figures, trills and grace notes. Focus on the direction of the line with your vibrato, and each B flat, no matter the octave, should be related to each other and moving forward to a strong finish. So I'm going to try and play this without the grace notes and trills and really think about my direction of the line. Now that I've done that, I'm going to simply add in the grace notes without losing this forward momentum. Lastly, I'm going to add in the trill. What's really important is when you're adding this trill to really think about your trill speed. It's a type of ornamentation that, similar to your vibrato, should be showing direction of the line. Don't keep your speed the same every time. Be creative throughout. Practice hard and practice smart. Best of luck this year.
Thank you.